Hey Wellness Warrior, the early warning signs of dementia can cause you to have mood changes, memory problems, and cognitive dysfunction. You may be suffering from one of the many early warning signs of dementia that most doctors miss. Dementia and Alzheimer's are often used interchangeably, and that's okay because they have many symptoms that overlap. When you look at Alzheimer's, it's considered an actual disease, whereas dementia is more of a category of symptoms. As we look at Alzheimer's, you can develop it as early as 30 years of age. It's referred to as young onset Alzheimer's. And this is something I think we should really make sure that we acknowledge, because when we look at any diseases out there, they're typically occurring in the body many years ever before being diagnosed. You could take cancer, for instance. It's estimated that it can start showing up in the body 15 years prior to ever getting a diagnosis. Let's take type 2 diabetes, for example, a disease that most people understand. You're going to have insulin surging in the body, you're going to have blood sugar instability, and this will go on for sometimes years prior to you ever getting a type 2 diabetes diagnosis. So point being is these things can start very early, and there's different signs of dementia and Alzheimer's that we can start watching for. Now, when we look at Alzheimer's, it's estimated that on average, people develop it around the age of 65 to 74. And as far as dementia, it's much older. It's right around 84 years of age. But here's the thing. Over the next 20 years, dementia is estimated to double. That means by the year 2040, over 40 million people will suffer from dementia. I think it's so important for you to watch for the early warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia in your everyday life. For me personally, I watched my grandmother go through dementia, and not only is it the hardest thing to watch somebody go through, but my goodness, it is terrifying to think that you might have to go through that yourself one day. So in my own personal life, if I see that my brain is slipping or I'm having some of these early warning signs, I take it seriously. I change my lifestyle. I change my supplementation, and I am not even kidding here. I'm 100% serious. I make these changes because I do not want to have to go through this one day, and I'm going to teach you how to do the same thing. So let's dive into the early warning signs and symptoms of dementia. But before I do, I want to mention that you may be experiencing some of these signs and symptoms, and this is not at all what you have. It's very common for people who are going through excessive amounts of stress and also lack of sleep at night to develop Alzheimer's or dementia-like symptoms. I've certainly had times in my life, starting my career, having kids, not getting enough sleep at night with all kinds of stress, where I myself was developing these kinds of signs and symptoms. So make sure that if you do have a lot of stress and you're not getting enough sleep, that you do focus on that. Okay, let's talk about the first one. Now, the first sign that you can look for is confusion or also trouble remembering faces. Okay, this is very common. I remember when my grandmother couldn't recognize my dad anymore, her own son, which is a very sad thing to happen. Now, the next one here is memory loss, specifically your short-term memory. If you're noticing that your short-term memory really is struggling, then, this is something to pay attention to for sure. And remember, I'm going to show you ways to overcome this and protect your brain and even optimize your brain, even if you're not struggling with this stuff. So, hold tight for that. Let's get through the signs and symptoms. Now, difficulty concentrating, okay? If you're somebody who just can't sit down and concentrate on a task and, your brain's all over the place, this also could be a sign to look for. Mood changes is another big one. Somebody is just getting angry all the time. A lot of times when you see somebody who is suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, you notice that they just kind of lash out on people. They have very angry mood patterns. So that's something to look out for. Being confused about time, okay? And the other thing is places. So let's say if you have a failing sense of direction, you're somebody who's maybe traveled a route most of your life, but all of a sudden you're getting confused on, how to go to a certain place you're very familiar with. Well, that could be a sign. Another thing is emotionally flat, right? Somebody just loses their personality. They used to be a funny individual. They're not funny anymore. Somebody who just has a very, monotone mood, but they also are somebody who just wants to be left alone. They like to just sequester themselves away from everybody else, and they lose their happiness, they lose their personality, so they're emotionally flat. The next thing to look for is repetition in task or words. So this would be somebody who maybe, gets themselves dressed in the morning and then they find themselves going to do their, makeup or fix their hair for a second time. Very common. Or they tell the same story over and over again. Okay, I remember my grandmother doing this. She would walk up to you, she would tell you a story. 5 minutes later, she would walk up to you and tell you the same story, and all you did is smiled and you shook your head and you go, oh my gosh, and you act like you never heard it before because you were trying to be kind. The next thing is trouble with your speech. What happens is you'll hear someone who is struggling with Alzheimer's and dementia, they will string a sentence together that sometimes just won't even be coherent, okay? It's something that's just totally unintelligible. So we have to make sure that if you notice when you are speaking that maybe you're struggling to come up with words, maybe you're struggling to string a sentence along and speak clearly, those are all things that you could look out for. And remember that if you're somebody who's getting early onset Alzheimer's, you may just struggle with this stuff at a very low level, okay? This is the type of thing I'm talking about where you want to start paying attention even at a younger age, because when you think of somebody who's elderly, they may be struggling at these things at more of a severe level, but just think of the person who has poor brain endurance, brain fog, memory issues, mood changes. These are things that start happening at a very low level that you can start to identify and go, I need to make some changes and I need to make changes now. Now, the other thing that happens is you can actually have changes in your gut function, okay? So many people who are developing some of these issues with Alzheimer's and dementia, they start to have constipation issues just because of the neurological connection between brain and gut. There's a lot of neurological tissue within the gut. So therefore, many times when you have brain issues, you have gut issues and vice versa. The early warning signs of dementia and Alzheimer's should be taken seriously because, as I mentioned before, if we look at cancer and diabetes, these things start many years in advance. So when you notice that you're starting to struggle, make sure that you're looking at getting the proper support. So the big question is, what do you do? Well, I will first say that I'm very disappointed in how the traditional medical community helps people with this, because whenever you go to them and you start seeing these different struggles and you get diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's, it's blamed on bad luck or bad genes, when in reality it's bad advice from your doctor who is supposedly taking care of you for all these years. They ignored the warning signs and now you have a real problem. So let's talk about how to not only prevent it but also overcome these issues, especially if you're in some of the early stages. Now, we're going to talk about two different categories here. We're going to talk about lifestyle, but we'll also talk about supplementation that you can use in order to help with these issues. Let's go ahead and dive right into lifestyle first. The first thing that you have to do is you really want to make sure that you stop the sugar. The average person is consuming 130 pounds of sugar every single year. I mean, just think about that. If you took 5-pound bags of sugar and you stacked them up, you'd have this mountain of sugar. That is how much each person is consuming on average. It's insane. And when we look at Alzheimer's or dementia, it's referred to as type 3 diabetes. It's because too much sugar over a long period of time and it becomes a chronic issue, it starts to deteriorate the brain. Stop the sugar. That's a very important piece here. Now, the next thing that we want to do is go low carb. The average person is consuming right around 400 grams of carbohydrates per day. That's an insane amount of carbohydrates, but the reality is that's how most people are taught to eat. I was taught to eat like that, so I'm not blaming or pointing fingers at anybody who might be watching this. It's something that I had to really work hard to overcome, because when you eat all those carbs and you have all that sugar every day, well, you become addicted to it. So if that's you, just start getting yourself moving in the right direction. So it's important to stop the sugar, but also bring the carbohydrates down. I recommend that you focus on consuming around 100 grams or less of carbohydrates per day. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to focus on eating a whole food diet that is rich in good quality fats. Okay, we're thinking fats like olive oil and coconut oil. These fats are very important for your brain. When you look at your brain is made up of roughly around 80% fat. Okay, it's this big old blob of fat up there. So you need these good healthy fats to make sure that your brain is getting its proper nutrition. If you're somebody who is struggling with some brain issues, it would be a really good idea to try the ketogenic diet. And if you have severe issues along the lines of like a neurological problem like dementia or Alzheimer's, then you certainly want to think of going full-time keto. If you're just having some symptoms that show up here and there, then you could go keto for like 30 days, come off of it, and then do keto again for another couple weeks. You can go in and out of ketosis, and it would be highly beneficial and healing for your brain. Next on our list is make sure that you are exercising daily. You have to get that movement in. Your genetics require exercise. I say it all the time, you don't have to go to the gym and become the next Olympic athlete, but you do got to get some movement in every day. At minimum, a 30-minute brisk walk. When you exercise, you increase blood flow to your brain, you increase oxygenation, and it's very healthy for your brain. So make sure that you're out there moving and getting that exercise in. On our list next is going to be increasing the amount of fermented foods and fiber that you're consuming regularly, okay? It's very important to make sure that you're giving your gut the proper foods that it needs in order to heal and also thrive. So fermented foods along the lines of like sauerkraut and kimchi, these have good probiotics in it. And if you can do this, it may be a struggle for some people, but if you can do this, try to eat fermented food every single day. You can use things like yogurt and all the different good fermented vegetables. I personally am a big fan of like pickles and all these different fermented foods, so try to consume them daily. It's good for your gut health. Let's take a turn now and let's take a look at supplementation, okay? Because supplementation is important. When we look at overcoming many of these issues, like there's a couple routes you can go. Obviously, the lifestyle piece should always be there. You should implement all the things I just talked about. When you're starting to see though some of these early warning signs of dementia and Alzheimer's, I don't particularly myself want to go towards medicine, and I didn't think that anybody who watched this channel did either. So what we want to do is use some high doses of some different herbs and vitamins that nature gives to us in order to help heal our bodies. As we get into some of these supplementations, the first thing that I would like to recommend is ketones, okay? Now, ketones are really good for many reasons. And I would say that many times people look at ketones, taking exogenous ketones, as something that is ridiculous, right? Many of the people in the keto community demonize these. They say, well, people are just pushing supplements, you know, you don't need to take ketones. Reality is that they're actually very good for people who are struggling with neurological issues. So you can take a scoop of exogenous ketones and it really helps supercharge the brain, and they're very healing too. So it doesn't matter if you're dealing with early signs of Alzheimer's and dementia or any other neurological issue, they're very good for you, okay? And by the way, I'll go ahead and put a link to all the different supplements that I recommend, or anything I recommend in this video, in the description below, because I think that it's very important to make sure you're getting good quality sources, things that you can actually know that are pure, vitamins that you know you can actually absorb. And I don't believe that all different supplements are created equal, and I use these things clinically every day, so I know what works and what doesn't. So exogenous ketones is one. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next. Probiotics, okay? We already mentioned that there's this gut-brain axis, and if your brain is suffering, your gut suffers, and vice versa. So one of the ways that we can actually support our brain health is by taking probiotics, okay? So use this regularly, use probiotics regularly in order to promote good gut health and essentially good brain health. The next thing that we can do is take B vitamins, okay? Many of the different B vitamins are going to support your nervous system and also support brain health and prevention, and also help you fight stress, which I talked about can lead to some of these different signs and symptoms we were talking about. So I'm a big fan of using not just like one particular B vitamin, but a good B complex that has everything in it that will really support neurological health. The next thing that we can look to using, okay, after the B vitamins is going to be high doses of DHA, okay? This is something I'm a huge fan of, and a lot of people have never heard this, but there was a study with 280 people, and what they found is that when they were using high doses of DHA, it increased nonverbal reasoning, it led to better mental flexibility, and it also helped people with their memory and their vocabulary, okay? So if I'm working with anybody who's struggling with brain issues, you better believe that I'm using high doses of DHA, and you wanna make sure that you're taking this seriously, because looking at the brain tissue, the DHA is a core element to good, healthy structure of your brain. So think of it that way. Now, next on our list is going to be CoQ10. Okay, I'm a big fan of CoQ10. It helps with heart health and so many different aspects of your overall energy and well-being. So you can use CoQ10. You want to make sure you're using the active form so that you can absorb it well. I'll put resources down below for anybody who's interested in this kind of thing. And then next on my list of things I really like to utilize in order to support brain health, and this is one that I personally use every single day, and it is MCTs. Okay, MCTs are really going to go straight to your brain, give you good energy, and that's a healthy fat. Okay, so looking at MCTs to boost brain health and also fight against those early warning signs of dementia and Alzheimer's is going to be really, really powerful. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked this video, I think you'll really like this video over here next.